Welcome to the World History 1 lecture series. At the end of each slide there will be a 10-second delay. Use this time to pause the presentation and complete your notes. When you are done, push play and you will move forward. This lecture will begin in 5 seconds. Welcome to World History 1 Lecture 5.3 on the influence of Greek geography, Part 1, and hooray for Hollywood! You see, Hollywood is filled with historians. Well, not really. It's filled with directors and producers and actors and everybody, but these people rely on history to get most of their stories, and they really like Greek history. For example, we've got Percy Jackson and Wrath of the Titans, and Disney even gets in on it with Hercules. All these movies deal with Greek mythology. And then we have the 300, which is the Thermopylae Pass, and 300, Rise of an Empire, which is the Battle of Salamis. These deal with the Persian Wars. And even when we get goofy, we're still going back to Greek history. Meet the Spartans is all about Greek society. And Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? That's the story of the Odyssey. So, to understand Greece and its influence, you need to understand its geography and how geography affected mythology, society, and warfare. Go to the next slide. Remember how I told you that in Greece, water is everywhere? Well, you see, the sea is part of ancient Greece, and no one knew that better than Homer. Not that Homer. Homer is a blind lyrical poet from the Dorian or Greek Dark Ages, which is 1100 to 700 BCE, and he explains how ancient Greeks were connected to the sea. Homer composed epic poetry, which discussed a serious subject like going to war or traveling a great distance, and it contains details of heroic deeds and events significant to Greek cultures. In other words, we know about the ancient era Greeks from the writings of Homer. And Homer's two epic poems include the Iliad, which details the Trojan War that was fought over the city-state of Troy, 1194 BCE to 1184 BCE, and the fight between Agamemnon, who's the Messenian king, and Achilles, who's a demigod or half-human god. The sequel to the Iliad is the Odyssey, which details the 10-year trip of Odysseus to his city-state after the war. The Iliad focuses on one man's long journey across the Greek seas. Go to the next slide. There are benefits shared by all river valley civilizations. There's water for agriculture. There's good soil so we can grow crops. There's trading. But the benefits of living by the sea make the Greeks special. The Greeks spread their culture, we call it Hellenic culture, to places like Egypt. That's called cultural diffusion, and you can see Greek culture in Egypt. The Greeks also foster a seafaring and trading tradition. They become excellent sailors and even better traders, and we see this in Homer's epic poems. The Greeks stop trading goods for goods, that's called bartering, and they create a monetary-based economy. Instead of putting all your sheep on a ship and going somewhere and hoping that you can trade the sheep for what you need, the Greeks are getting on boats with coins, with money, and they're buying what they need from faraway ports. And finally, all this seafaring knowledge leads to the Athenian Greeks developing a powerful navy. The Greeks will develop a powerful navy, and eventually they will control the seas around Greece. Go to the next slide. It's a good thing the Greeks take advantage of the sea because the land is not so good. You see, there is limited arable land. That means land to grow crops, and we have a dry climate. It's really hard to build a civilization off of these things. In fact, this fosters the development of semi-isolated city-states like Athens and Sparta. The land is also hilly, which keeps Hellenic or Greek civilization divided until Philip of Macedonia conquers the Balkan Peninsula in 359 BCE. Greece is not a united civilization until way late in its history. Because of the land requires the Greeks to colonize or go and start new outposts in the eastern Mediterranean basin to support their growing population. Go to the next slide. So by now you should see that Greek civilization is developing differently because of its geography. Well, let's look at one characteristic of civilization to see just how different this development becomes, and that is religion, or in Greece we call that Greek mythology. Mythology is a rich collection of stories about the exploits of gods and goddesses which sought to explain natural phenomena and life events. So we have people like this guy. He's Poseidon. Mythological Greek gods and goddesses represented human, natural, or spiritual qualities. So Poseidon is the moody or grumpy Greek god of the seas, and he's second only to Zeus. Greek mythology is incorporated into Western culture, our culture, through art and literature, primarily due to its adoption by Roman civilization. The Romans are going to adopt Greek god and goddesses, Greek mythology, and they're going to do this. They're going to have this guy, who is the Roman god, Neptune, king of the seas. Look familiar? Go to the next slide. Remember when we studied Egyptian religion and there were multiple gods, including the Pharaoh and Ra? Greek mythology is similar. Greek mythology is polytheistic, which means the Greeks worshipped multiple gods. And the Greeks believed that their gods and goddesses lived on big, rich Mount Olympus. The major Greek gods and goddesses are Zeus, king of the gods and ruler of mankind; Hera, Zeus's wife and goddess of the family; Poseidon, god of the seas and second only to Zeus. That's how important the seas are to the Greeks. Ares, god of war; Athena, goddess of wisdom and the arts; Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty; Artemis, goddess of the hunt and childbirth, fertility; Apollo, god of the sun and music; Hades, god of the underworld; and Persephone, who's the wife of Hades and the goddess of the seasons. The Greeks had a god or goddess for just about everything in Greek society. Go to the next slide. Greek geography will heavily influence Greek mythology. In turn, Greek mythology will heavily influence a lot of other things in Greek civilization. Greek sculpture, sculpture being the art of making three-dimensional forms out of rock or clay, focuses heavily on mythology. You could see that here in the Phidias statue of Athena. Mythology is a major part of Greek architecture as well, as seen in the Parthenon, which is a temple built at the top of the Acropolis in Athens. Now, the two golden looking things, they're fake. They're in Nashville, Tennessee, but they're cool to see. This is the real Parthenon in Athens, Greece. That's it for this lecture, and I look forward to seeing you in class.